Alright, so we're in chapter 12. These are somatic senses and special senses. So I want you to try and imagine, okay, living your life without being able to see, without being able to hear, without being able to feel anything, without being able to taste anything or smell anything or keep your balance when you're walking up or down stairs or on flat surfaces. So if you don't have those senses, life on your own would be pretty difficult, right? It would be pretty hard to survive because you need those senses to get feedback from your environment, and so your body can make any homeostatic changes that it needs to make, right? So you have somatic senses and special senses to allow you to do that, right? To be able to monitor the external environment and change your internal environment to whatever you need it to be. Okay, so you have special senses and then you have general senses. And special senses are your sight, your hearing, your vision, or sight, hearing, taste, smell, and which one am I forgetting? Sounds. Okay, so taste. The technical name for taste is gustation, or gustation. Okay, and smell is olfaction. So if you see those terms, that's what they mean. All right, so those are your 5 special senses, and we'll talk about all of these and how they work. Okay, and then you have general senses. Those include somatic senses and visceral senses. Somatic senses are things like tactile things like touch, and pressure, okay, and vibration. Then you have thermal receptors, okay, which are things like detecting warm and cold, pain, and proprioception. Okay, proprioception is basically knowing where your body is at all times and where your different limbs are. Okay, so you need to monitor that and in order to be able to move properly. And the visceral senses are regulating and giving you any sort of feedback on your internal condition, so like your internal organs, right? So it's monitoring all of that stuff and giving you feedback for that. So somatic and visceral. Okay, so when you get a signal from one of these senses, you get what's called a sensation. Okay, a sensation is your definition, the conscious or subconscious awareness of change in your external or internal environment. So you are either consciously aware of this change or subconsciously, and it could either be external environment or the internal environment. Okay, what's going on inside your body. So you get these sensations. In order to be able to get these sensations, you need these 4 things. Okay, number 1, you need a stimulus. So you need something to change, whether it be the temperature of the room, whether it be touching something. Okay, you need some sort of stimulus. Okay, and that stimulus needs to be able to activate the sensory receptor, which is number 2. Okay, so you have to have a stimulus, and then you have to have a sensory receptor that is able to pick up that stimulus, right, and detect that stimulus. And that sensory receptor then needs to be able to take that stimulus and convert it to an electrical signal, right, neurons, and then send that up to the brain. And in order to do that, send it up to the brain, you need some sort of neural pathway, right, to take that sense and send it up to the brain. And then in your brain, you need a part of the brain to take that and integrate it. Okay? So if you have all 4 of those things, you can get a sensation, the feeling of cold, the feeling of something being warm, the feeling of pressure, right? Something like that, right? Or see, vision, okay? So you need all 4 of those things to have a sensation. Perception. So your brain is responsible for perception, okay? Which is the conscious awareness of what's going on around you, okay, in the external environment and internally. Okay? So perception occurs in your cerebral cortex, in that part of the brain, like where all of those sensations get integrated. So the sensation, okay, goes up to your brain, and then your brain is responsible for perception. How do you perceive that sensation? Is it hot? Is it cold? That sort of thing. Does that make sense? Okay, so you get sensation, and then your brain's responsible for perception, which is the conscious awareness of what's going on. What's kind of crazy is that you actually adapt to things. So, like, for example, sensory receptors over time will be less and less stimulated by the same thing. For example, when you put your perfume on in the morning, or your cologne, right? When you first spray it, you smell it, and it's like, oh, it's so nice, right? It smells so good. But after a little while, you don't smell it anymore, right? Does the perfume disappear? Does it just like go away? No, because other people can smell your perfume or your cologne. But what happens is your sense of smell, the receptors for the sense of smell, over time they adapt to that smell. So they get less and less stimulated by that same smell, which is fine because you don't necessarily want or need to smell your perfume all day long, right? It's not critical to your survival, right? So you can adapt to certain things. Sensory receptors get less and less sensitive to the same stimuli over time. Okay, so they can adapt, and it's either when they adapt, it's either your brain just kind of blocks it out, so it's still sending the signal, but your brain just kind of says, okay, no, we're not going to pay attention to this anymore, or the sensory receptor itself actually gets less and less sensitive to it. So you keep stimulating it, but it's not as sensitive to it as it was before. Okay, so the adaptation, can occur either in your brain or at the receptor level itself. Does that make sense? Okay. Depending on the type of receptor, you can either have a fast adaptation or a slow adaptation. Okay, fast adapting receptors would be for like pressure, touch, and smell. Okay, those adapt very rapidly. Whereas like slow adapting receptors would be things like pain. Pain doesn't actually really adapt at all. Body position, and then also chemical levels in your blood. Question: why do you think it might be good that pain receptors are very slow to adapt? They don't really adapt. Why do you think that might be a good thing?
So you don't see it right afterwards.
So you don't what?
You don't panic right afterwards.
Okay. So you don't panic right after the incident. What else? Yeah, Caleb. Slow. Sorry, pain adapting slowly. Exactly, right? You need that pain sensation to stay there as long as something is wrong, right? So that you do something to prevent more damage, further damage, okay? And we'll talk more about pain, but that's why it's probably a good thing that pain doesn't really adapt, even though sometimes you might like it too. Okay, so receptors. We have a bunch of different kinds of sensory receptors, okay? And we can group them into two groupings, either structurally, like their structural grouping, what they look like, what they are actually, how they're put together, okay? Or functionally by what they do, the types of things that they detect. So the structural, we can have free nerve endings. Okay, free nerve endings are probably the simplest. Remember back from, chapter 9, you have like the unipolar neurons, right, where the axon and dendrite are kind of like fused together. And a free nerve ending is basically a unipolar neuron with just a dendrite sticking out into something, into your skin, okay, whatever it may be. So a free nerve ending is just a neuron, okay, with a bunch of dendrites on it. Yeah, makes sense? Okay, so types of senses that are picked up by free nerve endings are things like pain, okay, thermal sensations, tickling, itching, and then also some touch receptors will be picked up by free nerve endings. Encapsulated nerve endings, that's basically where you take your free nerve and you wrap those dendrites here in something like connective tissue. Okay? So you take that nerve ending and you cover it with stuff. Okay, so it's like encapsulated. The end is in a capsule. So different sensations that are picked up by encapsulated nerve endings are touch, pressure, and vibration. Okay, and then you have separate specialized cells. So your the cells that pick up light or sound, okay, that allow you to see and to hear. Those are specialized cells specific to picking up light or specific to picking up sound, right? So they're very, very specific for that type of sense or the stimulus that they're picking up. Does that make sense? Yeah. So you've got like hair cells in your ear that are responsible for picking up sound. Okay, and the cells in your eyes that are like the rods and cones for picking up light. Okay? So specialized, separate stuff. Those are the structural types. Functional types. Bunch of different functional types of sensory receptors. So you have mechanoreceptors that are going to pick up things like any sort of cell deformation. So they'll pick up like stretching of your skin. Okay. So when you take a piece of your skin and you stretch it, when you stretch it, you're taking cells that normally might be round, okay, and you're stretching it to a different shape. And so that cell becomes deformed. So we have mechanoreceptors that pick up on that stretching motion by detecting the cell deformation, or like bending. Right? So when you bend, they pick that up as well. So mechanoreceptors would be things like touch. Okay, touch are a lot of touch receptors are mechanoreceptors, pressure receptors, and vibration as well. All are mechanoreceptors. Then thermoreceptors pick up temperature. They give hot and cold thermoreceptors. Nociceptors pick up pain. Okay, so if you see nociceptor, it means it's detecting pain. Chemoreceptors pick up chemicals. So that would be things like taste and smell. Okay, would be chemoreceptors. And then osmoreceptors, those are detecting the amount of like water in your blood. Okay, so they maintain osmotic pressure. So different water levels in your blood and in your body fluids. Okay, so those are the different types of functional receptors. Somatic. So you have somatic sensors, which are touch, pressure, vibration, all of that stuff in your skin. You've got a lot of those in your skin, and in the mucous membranes, so like in your mouth, and then in your tendons and in your joints. So that's where you find most of those sensory somatic receptors. However, the receptors for these kinds of senses are not distributed like evenly throughout your body, right? Or evenly throughout your skin. You have certain areas of the body that are much more sensitive to things because they have a higher amount of receptors. Okay, so when you do your lab on Friday, you're going to be testing this actually. And so if you take like a paper clip and you bend it into a U shape and you get 2 points, right? If you take that and you put that on your finger, okay, your finger can detect that there are 2 points touching you, right? Because you have a higher distribution of touch and pressure receptors in your fingertips than you do in other places of your body. So when you touch your finger, you can detect 2 points because each point is pushing on a different receptor and it sends a signal to your brain and your brain's like, oh yeah, there's 2 there. Whereas if you take that and you put it on the back of your neck, you can't feel 2 points. It feels like 1, even though it is 2 that are touching you, because you don't have very many like touch and pressure receptors on the back of your neck, because you don't need to have as many on the back of your neck as other parts of your body. So you actually have a higher concentration of touch receptors in areas like your fingertips and on your lips and on the tip of your tongue. Okay, and again, like we were talking about before when we were talking about the brain, you have bigger parts of your brain dedicated to those areas and more touch receptors. So that's why babies stick everything in their mouth because they've got lots of touch receptors there. And they grab on to things and are feeling things, right? That's why, especially when babies are young, they like to do different textures, they like to play with different textures, different sounds, okay? Because they're learning about their world. So different, and they always stick everything in their mouth, right? So you have receptors in very sensitive areas like your fingertips, your lips, and your tongue. And your somatic senses include tactile, which is touch, thermal, pain, and then the proprioceptive. Okay, tactile sensations. So the different tactile sensations are touch, pressure, and vibration. Okay, as well as itch and tickling. Those are tactile sensations. Touch, pressure, and vibration, the type of receptor that they're actually using are those encapsulated nerve endings that are mechanoreceptors. So they're nerve endings that are enclosed by connective tissue, and they're detecting stretch and bend and stuff like that, cell deformation. Okay, they're going to detect touch, pressure, and vibration. Itch and tickle, those are picked up by free nerve endings. Okay, so that's what the type of receptors that are getting those different types of senses. Touch. You've got different types of receptors for touch. You have receptors that adapt quickly, touch receptors that adapt quickly, and you have touch receptors that do not adapt quickly, they adapt very slowly. So the two that adapt quickly are the Meissner corpuscles. I'll show you a picture of them. And the hair root plexuses. So remember chapter 5, I believe it was, when we talked about the integumentary system, you have a nerve that wraps around each individual root of every hair on your body, right? So that's like when an insect lands on your skin, if it touches a hair, right? You can feel it, right? And if you touch one single hair, you can feel it because you've got that nerve ending that wraps around the hair, okay? So you can detect touch. So those are found in areas where you have hair on your body, which is pretty much everywhere, except for the palms of your hands and the soles of your feet. In those areas, you'll have Meissner corpuscles, which detect touch. Okay? Okay, so hair root plexuses, Meissner corpuscles, fast adapting. You have slow adapting receptors for touch. Those are called Merkel discs and Ruffini corpuscles. The Merkel discs are found in the epidermis, in the outer layer of your skin, and then the Ruffini corpuscles are found deeper in the dermis and the tendon. So let me show you the picture. Okay, so here's your fast and slow adapting. So the Merkel disc, the Meissner corpuscle, the Ruffini corpuscle, and the hair root plexus. Okay, the Ruffini, this one right here, and the Meissner, okay, those are the slow adapting. Okay, oops. I think I switched these two. The Merkel disc, okay, and the hair root plexus, those are fast adapting. Right, so you can see again too as where they are, the difference where they are in your skin. Right, so your Ruffini are much deeper in your skin, whereas your Merkel discs and Meissner are closer to the surface. See that? Okay. Okay, so touch, 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 touch. All three of those, or four of those, are involved with the sensation of touch. Okay, pressure and vibration. Pressure is picked up by Pacinian corpuscles in your skin, and those are encapsulated nerve endings. So the nerve ending is all wrapped up in connective tissue, so it kind of looks like an onion. So called the Pacinian corpuscle. It's fast adapting. It's very, very widely distributed in your dermis, your subcutaneous layer, around joints, tendons, muscles, and the periosteum around your bones. Okay, so those are detecting pressure. So here's your Pacinian corpuscle, fast adapting for pressure. Okay. You also have Meissner corpuscles that will pick up on pressure as well, and your Merkel discs will pick up on pressure. Okay, so they do both touch and pressure. Right? Those two do both touch and pressure. In fact, the Meissner corpuscle also does vibration. So, picks up on a lot of different senses. And the Pacinian corpuscle also does vibration as well. Okay. So basically, you take the Pacinian corpuscle and your Merkel disc, and if something's vibrating on your skin, the rapidity at which like the signals are being sent up to your brain tells your brain that it's vibration, right? So the Meissner and the Pacinian do that, and so your Meissner, okay, picks up on fast vibrations, and the Pacinian picks up on the slower vibrations. Does that make sense? Kind of cool, huh?